Sure, yeah. Well, let's just call the order. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll call the meeting to order at 5:30 PM. Roll call Mike Steinel, Sue Springman, Brian Wallace,
Here.
Chris Zellner,
Here.
Kristen Runge,
Here.
Joe Zitzelsberger.
Here.
Okay. Because Kristen is remote, we would entertain a motion to nominate a different chair for the meeting.
Move to have Chris Zellner chair today's meeting.
Second.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, first item on our agenda is minutes. Do we need to have two separate motions for this? Is there two of them?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make the motion to approve the minutes of the April 14th, 2025 meeting.
Second.
Second by Kristen Runge. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Let's have it. Second one is approve the minutes of May 12, 2025 meeting. I'll make that motion as well.
Second.
Second by Kristen Runge. Any other comments? Okay, call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Next, we have public comment. And for those who is there anybody online?
We do not have anyone online, but we do have two cards for people in the audience.
Perfect.
So first up, Nyla Fry, 404 East Verleen Avenue, Waunakee.
Hello, tonight I'm here as a almost 48-year resident of Waunakee. I know the Lakota group will benefit from the findings of the Housing Task Force as well as the work the Sustainable Waunakee Committee is doing. As a community, we can and will come together to create economic growth as well as a good quality of life for residents while holding property taxes down. At the same time, my heart sinks every time I hear senior citizens scapegoat for aging in place. In the event senior citizens sold their homes, those homes wouldn't be affordable for working families. Since all municipalities strive for a vital, self-sustaining economy, we need many different types of housing. Workforce housing is needed to keep building our business community, since without workers, businesses won't survive. Density is what people think of for workforce housing. Let's think about quality of life and security for all families. Let's think outside the box with all developments, including workforce housing with owner-occupied fourplexes or 3 flats incorporated into projects. I'm sure architects can come up with a lot better ideas than I could ever come up with. Workers' incomes have not kept up with inflation. World trade, the so-called free market, hit low to middle income workers, leaving their wages stagnant, while costs for college education skyrocketed and housing costs blew up. It's time to create a plan, creating a Waunakee where workers know they are welcome and senior citizens aren't shamed for staying in their homes they paid for during years of hard work and are still paying for every time they pay a tax bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Mary Heimbecker, 306 West 3rd Street, Waunakee.
Mary Heimbecker, like 306 West. Mary Heimbecker, 306 West 3rd Street, Waunakee. I'd like to speak on your comments from the last Plan Commission meeting on the new comp plan. You discussed not losing small town feel. That was lost many years ago. We have large apartment complexes on our main street that go right to the sidewalk now. To all the huge sprawl of homes that look like they are right on top of each other coming in from Middleton on Highway Q to the new development on 19 and 113, and several other developments in the area. Many people do not see us as a bedroom community any longer, but a suburb of Madison. To me, we are already Sun Prairie with no amenities. You spoke to not wanting to become Sun Prairie. It was truly upsetting to hear you discuss about keeping poor people out of Waunakee. People are already struggling because there are not enough housing that is affordable for people to live in. You claimed Sun Prairie had many affordable homes. I went out and looked. They have 10 apartment complexes that are income-based. Otherwise, their rents run for a studio $1,300 to a 3-bedroom over $2,600. They do have, like I said, 15 are listed. The photos of their affordable housing actually look very nice. You made no mention of the Housing Task Force study that should be included in this new study for a comp plan. And the survey that you talked about having should go out to every single household, whether that be through utility bills. Almost every person in Waunakee certainly has a utility bill, even if they're an apartment dweller, to figuring out other ways, but they should be easily obtainable, not making people run to libraries to get them or wherever else they have to pick up a hard copy or trying to figure out how to do it online. You should make it as easy as possible for people to get the survey, to put their words in. And I can say, I've read comments. There was one lady who commented, her and her husband are both nurses. They can't afford to live in some of the homes that are being built here. They had struggled to find housing, and they have a dual income for registered nurses. So that's something we truly need to think about in this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others?
I do not have any other cards. Are there any from the audience?
Okay, thank you. All right, first item on business items
And
is,
before we get to the first item, because of the discussion we had on item 3, I'd like to move that first.
okay. So do we need to make a motion on that, Brian?
Yeah. probably.
Okay, I'll make the motion to move item 3 up in the order to number 1. Do I have a second?
Second,
Okay, second by Kristen. Any other comments? Okay, call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. So with that,
Yeah, I can, if you.
Brian, go ahead.
So item number 3 is discuss and take action on a site plan and conditional use permit application at 606 Reeve Drive. Both of these actions would be final action by the Plan Commission. The issue that we have is, bottom line is we're not going to be able to act tonight. We have 4 members who are present, so we can appropriately call the meeting to order. But Mr. Zellner has informed me that he needs to recuse himself from taking action on item number 3. Is that accurate? Which means that we only have 3 voting members and the body cannot take action with only 3 people to vote on the item. And so, I guess I would leave it up to you all as to whether or not you want to, have a discussion on it. But my understanding is we've already had the statutory public hearing regarding the conditional use permit. And so we don't, and appropriately, it's not identified as a public hearing tonight. And so theoretically, we could just put this item back on for the next Plan Commission meeting, the same way that it's stated now. I certainly leave it to the commission as to whether or not you have a discussion, but you are not going to be able to take action tonight.
So I would assume that we would have a conversation the next time. I would not, but we would have as a body the next time regardless. So it probably makes sense to wait for that. Do I have anybody that disagrees or has any other comments? Joe and Kristen both gave a thumbs up. Brian, agreed? So do we need to vote to table?
I don't
or-
think that we'll just put at a staff level, we'll put it on for the next item. Obviously, this is unfortunate. I can tell you, actually, there was another meeting that I had in another community tonight that got canceled because they didn't have a quorum. Unfortunately, municipalities just happen to run into this issue sometimes during the summer because so many people are out of the office either for work or for other reasons. And so it's unfortunate, but those are the cards that we've been dealt tonight.
Okay, so for the group for item 3, we apologize that we don't have the people here. We'll be at the next meeting and that's what we can do. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on then to number 2, or no, back to number 1, discuss and take action on an ordinance amending section 129-159 of the subdivisions chapter of the Waunakee Village Code for final action by the village board.
So starting on page 7 of your packet, and then page 8 of the packet is the existing code language regarding easements. And then pages 9 and 10 is some proposed new language. And so the circumstances are this. We have language in our code right now, and that's section 129-159 sub A that I would say every municipality has, which is we have public utility easements in all of our subdivisions. And you really shouldn't put anything over or on public utility easements, because whether it's Waunakee Utilities or TDS or AT&T or MG&E or whoever, those are there for a reason. We need to have utilities placed underground. Most of them are placed underground at this point. Some are still above ground, but those are the different utility services that are needed to provide services not only to the homes where the easements exist, but also just throughout the village. And now I will also say that I think Waunakee and other communities are wrestling with this issue, because you have a number of, whether it's developers or homeowners, that have a desire to put things like fences in the utility easement area. Right now, our existing code would prohibit that. And if I'm going to be totally honest with you, which I am, I would prefer to leave the language and quite frankly strengthen it and make it so nobody puts anything in a public utility easement area, because though the utilities are important, we shouldn't have anything that prohibits Waunakee Utilities or anyone else from getting access. However, village staff has been approached, I think, numerous times, whether it's by property owners or others, who would like to see some type of flexibility to allow. We've certainly been approached about fences in a utility area. I think there's other things like retaining walls that people have asked to be allowed in utility easement areas. And so the draft that is here for discussion, and ultimately you can think about it because this is a new issue for you. It's ultimately going to be a decision made by the village board. But what I would say that the language that's on page 9, the ordinance amendment, is effectively some form of a compromise. And so what it would allow is a property owner could put a fence, and only a fence, in a utility easement area, subject to the 3 subsections that are identified. And really what we're getting at there are a few things. Now, one thing to keep in mind is for public utility easements, this isn't a Village of Waunakee issue, and it's not even just a Waunakee Utilities issue. There are multiple entities, and I listed a number of them before, whether it's AT&T or TDS or MG&E or whoever. If you are a public utility, you have a right to put your facilities in these easement areas. And you also have a right to have access to your facilities within the easement area. And if a property owner has constructed, let's say, a deck or a fence in your easement area, and let's just assume for argument's sake that there are somewhere within the village, there is a fence or a deck that crosses an easement area. If TDS needs to get access to that, they can take down your deck, or at least the portion that's in the easement area, get access to their facilities, and they don't owe the property owner anything, because the property owner violated the law by putting, and it's not just a code provision, it's a state law, by putting, something that in an easement area. And that's the rule now, is you can't put stuff in the easement areas, notwithstanding the fact I think we probably all know that there are fences and other structures in easement areas within the village right now. This is an attempt to try to compromise by basically saying, as it relates to fences, and it only calls out for fences to be allowed in there. If you go and you get permit, you're a property owner and you get permission for Waunakee Utilities and TDS and MG&E and AT&T and anybody else that has a right to have facilities in the easement area, then you can go. You under this new code provision, you would be allowed to go put the fence there. However, you're also doing this at your own risk. If you do that and you damage any of the utility facilities, you are going to be responsible to pay that utility for any damage that you caused. And under this code language, if the utility needs to get access to those facilities, they're going to have the right to get access to them, notwithstanding your fence that's there, and they can take down your fence. So really and so what's the purpose for this ordinance? The ordinance would allow the fences to be in the utility easement areas under certain conditions. Right now, any fence that's in a utility easement area in the village is effectively illegal and should be removed. There's no exceptions for that. But that's the background, and the reason why it's before you is, I think, because of the communications to village staff from property owners and developers about a desire to have more than fences in utility easement areas, but from staff's perspective, this was the only thing that we're willing to put in an ordinance amendment. Obviously, if the plan commission and the village board feels differently, it could be either narrowed or broadened in scope.
Okay, so commissioners, comments that you may have. Brian, I'll start with you.
Yeah, this is a sticky subject, to say the least. I'm gonna give an example of, it was in front of us a couple of months ago where, an individual bought 2 lots in a subdivision in town. And the entire lot had a utility easement around it, and he had to vacate because they bought 2, so there was 2 utility easements between the 2 properties they had to vacate. What that tells me in that particular subdivision, and probably several of those that are like that, you've got the utility easement are completely boxed around the house. So in essence, the property has shrunk considerably and they're still paying for the entire area. So when you have a 6-foot or 3-foot utility easement and you have a setback of 6 feet, in essence, on any of these lots, I can't even put a retaining wall in because they'd be over the utility easement. That's a problem.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
If you're not gonna allow them to be there, that's a challenge for all these properties. Not just fence related, but other items as well.
it is. I mean, the flip side to that is everybody who, lives in subdivisions wants, they want, when they flip their lights on, they want electricity. They want the heat. They want broadband to be fast. They want all of this stuff. And that's the sacrifice is.
Well, it is. Now, what I would say to add to what I was talking about is that if you're going to have an ordinance that's gonna prohibit some of this stuff, then there has to be some equal ordinances or guidelines with, on these developments that says there's only certain areas that can have these.
Oh, we
easements.
have that in our development
Just be
agreement.
around the entire lot. They've got to restrict them to one side or the other or back or whatever. Because when you start taking away, 3 feet, 6 feet around the entire perimeter of the lot and shrinking it down, but yet you allow setbacks out to that same spot, there's nothing they can do beyond that. That's ridiculous.
I would say it's standard in the state of Wisconsin. The easements that we have in our subdivisions for our plats are the same easements that are required for all subdivisions across the state.
One of the first houses I built, the easement was in the back. Okay, the lot I have now, it's all around it.
Yeah.
It's 6 feet, at minimum, 3 feet to 6 feet minimum around the entire property.
Well, I suppose we could talk to utilities, but I think that basically that's what is expected right now for subdivisions. And the flip side is then you're not going to have,
What's comical is the
Utilities.
guy that came to put the cable in, didn't stay in the easement.
that's.
So when
an
you start
entirely
talking about
separate issue,
damage to
but-
I mean, there's a lot to this issue. There's a lot to this issue.
And it's more complicated from the standpoint of typically if you want to put a fence in, you're going to put it on the lot line and that's exactly where the easements are. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm a homeowner. My spouse would love to put certain things in and I tell her, nope, it's an easement area. You're not putting anything in there. I mean, if you want to live in a subdivision in the state of Wisconsin, you're pretty much subject to these rules. And I totally understand that it's a conflict and I totally understand that people don't like it. But at the end of the day, and to be clear, this isn't a Village of Waunakee issue and this isn't a code issue. This is a statutory issue. These public utilities have a right to have their facilities in the easement areas and there's nothing that the Village of Waunakee can do to prohibit that. Other than not having the services, which is not something that's not a, I don't think that's a.
Is there
practical.
is there any legalities to determine how much of the area can be taken up through an easement? Or can the
I would say
utility
that-
come in and just say, hey, I might need this at some point in the next 100 years and I want to put this whole area in an easement?
That's not how we end up with easements on our plats right now. I mean, in other words, this is, again, I believe this is standard throughout the state of Wisconsin where the width of the easements that we have, whether it's even either in a side yard or in a backyard, are what I would call standard and as small as they can be, because it's not just the facilities, it's also you need to have access to the facilities. And so I don't think that you could narrow the width of the easements any more than they've already been narrowed.
Kristen?
Yeah, so we are, I mean, I'm having I totally see the viewpoint of the owner. I am also thinking like, how do you get a utility truck to the middle of a yard, maybe backyard where the easement is, if it's not just that home that has a fence, but there's a series of fences there. So, my kind of questions are we exceeding state statutory requirements is the first question. And then the second, if we do this, do we have anything in there that says that it's not just that homeowner, but who is responsible to pay for the reconstruction of the fences for every fence that's on there? Well, I guess it would be every homeowner that would have a fence on there. I certainly think the fence versus a retaining wall, which would be next to impossible to deconstruct easily if we needed to get to an easement quickly and repair something, deconstructing a retaining wall and getting to the, whatever it is, the broadband cable or the, electrical conduit or whatever would be really far more difficult. So are we exceeding state requirements on this, or are we right at state requirements?
I don't believe that we're in violation of the law because we're not changing the responsibility of the parties through this. Effectively, all this ordinance is doing is if you satisfy these, this criteria, you're going to be able to put a fence there, but it doesn't change the fact that as a property owner, you are still solely responsible for any damage that you cause, or if the utility needs to get access, they can take down your fence at no cost to the utility, and then you as a property owner are going to have to put it back up. So we're not changing the law. All we're effectively doing here is making it so it's not a code violation if they satisfy this criteria. Because right now, and to answer one of the questions, every single phasing agreement that we have for all subdivisions explicitly says you can't put anything in a utility easement area. And to the extent that someone has put a fence, let's say in a utility easement area right now, not only are they at risk if they do any damage or if the utility needs to get access to it, they're in violation of our code. That's really the only change that's occurring here is if somebody wants to put a fence in and they satisfy, they get the permission of all the utilities to put the fence in, then they're just not in violation of the code anymore, assuming the amendment's approved. It doesn't change the dynamics between the property owner and the utilities at all.
Okay, so if we remove the ordinance, then does the homeowner still need to get a permission from the utility?
Let's assume that what happened here is we have a prohibition right now on anything with an easement area, and we just got rid of the easement. We got rid of the whole code language. It wouldn't change anything between the relationship between the property owner and the utilities. It would just mean that if somebody puts a fence in a utility easement, it's not a code violation in the village of Waunakee, but it doesn't change the relationship between the parties.
Okay, all right, thanks. I got to think on this one a little bit.
Okay, thanks, Kristen. Joe?
Yeah, to clarify on that last question, would there still be a responsibility on the behalf of the property owner to pay for pulling the fence or whatever if we were to eliminate this from our code altogether?
Yes.
Okay, so that's at the state level.
Yeah, it's fundamental that there are public utility easements and that the utilities have a right to have access and to not have their facilities damaged. And so to the extent that a property owner does either one of those things and the utility, needs to get access or needs to repair, the easiest way is that there's nothing that we can do in our code to change that, change the relationship between the property owner and the utilities. The only thing that we can do in our code, if we want to, is make it so it's not a code violation if certain criteria is met. Or if you just the other way to deal with it is just get rid of the code language altogether. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing that because there are a few people, not many probably, who actually read our code and then wouldn't run across this. Now, if they read it, they'll run across and see they can't do it. But yeah, it's and I agree, it's a difficult issue, and Waunakee is not the only community that's wrestling with this, but it's also, there's nothing that we can do that's going to modify the relationship between the utilities and the property owners.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, I look at this and I think part of the problem that I see, we've already got, language that prevents this from happening. Yet I am absolutely confident I can walk within a block of my own house and come up with at least a half dozen violations of it. So there's part of me that says, does it make any difference what we do here? People are going to do what they're going to do. They may or may not have any sort of consequence based on that code violation. Certainly if the utility needs to get in there, there'll be a consequence, but I think there's probably a decent number of people who are willing to roll the dice and, hope that doesn't happen. I guess the bottom line is, I certainly need to spend some more time kicking this around. I'm not prepared to take action on it today. I don't think we're in a good position to do that yet.
Could I say one thing? I mean, I think the one thing to take from this ordinance amendment is, and we've had a lot of discussions about this at a staff level, is the fences versus other things. I mean, and you obviously want codes that you can enforce. I mean, it's one thing to put a fence in there. In particular, depending on the fence, even if it has to be removed, it may not cost that much money for the property owner. I mean, for a property owner, I say, that's worth the risk. I'm going to put a fence in. I understand that it might have to be removed if they need to get access. But, to Christian's points, if you start having retaining walls or decks, I mean, that's where you really start to have a problem. Because one, it does potentially slow the time period within which the utility is actually going to be able to get access to something. And two, the cost of removal is probably going to be significantly greater to replace it is going to be significantly greater for the property owner. Because again, the property owner is going to be the one. And so to the extent that the commission and the board are, want to pursue this, I think that's one of the benefits of the language is it does create this exception for kind of a quasi exception for fences, but also doubles down on you can't have anything else in there. And that's the one thing that I think communities wrestle with on enforcement is it really becomes a problem if there's like a deck in an easement area. So I would just say, as you all are thinking about it, and I certainly think it's appropriate to think about this past just this meeting, that's one of the things that we thought about at a staff level in making a distinction between decks and other structures, fences and other structures.
And then one thing I'll add to that is we do have, I don't know the exact number, but we do have some pending fence permits for fences that would otherwise be in an easement because they're on the property line. And utilities is until we get through this amendment or not an amendment, utilities is being very strict, as they should be, about not putting fences in easements. And so we have to put all of those applications on hold until we have a conclusive answer to this.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback, I mean, that's essentially going to be whether or not the board, what is the recommendation from the plan commission and what does the board do? The only thing, I mean, and if the property owners were here, they wouldn't like what I have to say right now, but my position would be you bought the home subject to a rule that completely prohibits it. So to the extent that you have to wait, right now, as we sit here today, you don't have a right to have a fence and you shouldn't put a fence there. So the plan commission and the village board should take as long as they want to consider this because the only thing that's going to come out of this is potentially something positive for the property owners. Right now, as we sit here today, they can't put the fence there.
Okay, couple questions for me. So in here, it states village staff received concerns from developers about the ability of homeowners. Is it mainly coming from developers or is it coming from homeowners or is it a mix?
It's both.
Okay, and with the work that would be done, who would pay for the utilities having to take the time to do the work of knocking it down beforehand? Because it's going to take them time and cost to do that, to remove a fence that they're working in that area. So who's responsible for paying for that?
So it should be the property owner. Whether or not the specific utility is going to pursue that or not is a different issue, but.
So if they're out of compliance with putting that fence there, who's responsible? And then next, how long would they have to repair that fence?
Well,
Because the neighbors might not look like looking at a broken fence in their backyards as well, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I guess we'd have to cross the bridge on that second thing, but it's 100% the property owner that's got to pay for everything.
Okay, and let's just hypothetically say the utility is taking this out while they're doing it and the worker gets hurt. Who's responsible for that?
Well, I believe that, I mean, at the end of the day, that's just going to be a workers' comp issue. So I think it's, I don't know if there's any way to collect that money by the utility from a property owner related to the workers' compensation injury.
So I guess where I'm going is I don't see a lot of reason. I'm thinking about this too, but to make this change, I'm not really in favor. I like it where it's at. So,
Well, I will say this. I mean, if ultimately the plan commission's recommendation is keep things as they are, which is effectively a prohibition on any type of structure within a public utility easement area, I think we would want to take that guidance and maybe we could make the existing ordinance a little bit tighter, is what I would say. I mean, for what it's worth, that's where I mean, my opinion is you shouldn't have anything in there, but I also understand the pressure that village staff has been under, which is why, the draft amendment was made or proposed.
yeah, go ahead, Todd.
My opinions and Brian's opinion differ on this topic. I do want to share that there was reference to the utilities' recent objection to permits for fences. I want to clarify that that is a change. I'm not saying that what they're doing now is wrong. It's probably more in line with code or statutes, as Brian is referencing, but it is a change in practice. And there are developers that came in with discussions with the utility, with prior utility staff, and had been led to believe something different than is being applied now. And that's creating concern and confusion for the developers, and rightly so. So there is this kind of got going because of this change in practice circumstance. And I don't know if Bill wants to chime in, but Bill's been involved in this work with us for quite a while, dealing with fences and approval process, but there has been a distinct change that's led to the confusion.
And before Bill talk, and I'm not disputing anything that Todd's saying, other than one thing from the developer standpoint. The developers should never have a belief that anybody who buys their lots can put fences in a public utility easement area, because the developers that I know who are in this community are also operate in other communities, and this is a state issue, not a village issue. Not only that, as I've said before, in all of our development agreements, it says you can't put anything in a public utility easement area. So I think to the extent that they're saying that, that this is something new, I think that maybe they're choosing their words a little bit inaccurately, because it's always been the case that you can't put anything in a public utility easement area.
Well, I'll clarify that I chose the words today that may not be the words that the developers have used or have said. That's my attempt at a paraphrase. It might be bad. But there is distinctly something different happening now than was a short time ago. I will also say, in reference to the developers that are working here, that are also working in other communities, have found that other communities, not unlike ours, have found ways to work in elements in their development process and perhaps in their code to make accommodations. So I'm not saying we would be breaking the mold and would be the only one to find a way to make this work. That does occur in other communities, and we can provide examples.
Such as removable panels. Talking about where whatever may lead into that. Easement is removable without a lot of work. It's designed to, whether it be a gate or whatever they have to get through there. There's those kinds of things that have been discussed and looked into as well.
So I think this is worthy of halting for right now and having a larger discussion when we have a full committee here, or this goes to the board, so we can have a good sound discussion on. I mean, I don't like hearing that we have missed messaging potentially going on out there within any ordinance that we have. So I think it's important to take this a little bit further. Would everybody agree? Thumbs up, Brian?
Yes.
I was thinking it might be useful to have, maybe for your next discussion, invite in representatives from the utilities, and probably come in with some research I know our planning consultant, Tim Semin, has seen different approaches in different communities that he could probably provide us some expertise on. So maybe we bring a broader group of experts to discuss this together with the Plan Commission.
Very good. I would say Kristen and Todd can work through that. Thank you. Okay. Next item we have is discuss and take action on a site plan application for Waun-a-Bowl at 301 South Century Avenue for final action by Plan Commission.
Yep, so this is a return application. It came before the Plan Commission in May. The commission requested to see some additional trim along the freezer, this is a site plan for a freezer at Waun-a-Bowl. So requested to see some red trim along the top and changes to the landscaping. So they have brought back an amended application. I'm gonna share. Let me share this with you. See if this works. Okay. So as you can see on this top right corner, there's some red trim added along the top of the freezer to match the red trim that's along the top of the Waun-a-Bowl building. And then just below that is a landscaping plan for that kind of grassy median type area just outside the freezer, which does show, oh, that didn't zoom in. Shows quite a bit of landscaping for that small space, including a couple juniper trees, a flowering tree, and then also a deciduous tree along with some little shrubbery. Staff has taken a look at it. We don't have any issues with it. So our recommendation is to approve the site plan as presented.
Okay. Is there anybody here that wants to talk on this at all? Or maybe answer questions as they come up?
And then just make sure that that button is pushed. Yep, there you go. Thanks.
And then maybe just say your name and
Marty Prem with Prem Meats.
perfect. Thanks, Marty.
Yep.
Joe, any questions or comments?
No, honestly, this is exactly what I was hoping to see after our last discussion.
Brian?
I was good with it before, so thank you.
Okay. Yep, you're welcome.
Kristen?
Thank you for the changes. This is great.
Perfect.
Everybody wants to be easy on you tonight, apparently.
Yeah.
So I'm in the same boat. So I like the changes that were made and I think this is going to be a nice addition there. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So I'd look for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve.
Yeah, that's a,
That's all that really needs. And we have a second from Kristen. Any other comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, Waunakee Westport Joint Plan Commission. Updates?
The only thing for the agenda is the discussion on the ordinance amendment for fences. But seeing as no action was taken tonight, I will probably reach out to the town of Westport to see if they still want to have that discussion or wait until Plan Commission has made a motion on it.
Sounds good. All right, I will make the motion to adjourn.
second.
And a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thanks, everyone.